So your kid wants to play video games, and you're wondering if that's okay or not. Maybe you've heard things like, it'll rot your brain. Your kid's gonna be addicted to a screen. Violent video games lead to violent behavior later in life. And now listen, I've heard it all, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying to hand your kid an iPad and walk away for 8 hours. But what I am saying is that playing video games can be a totally acceptable activity for young kids. Today, I'll be sharing some of my personal recommendations, some stories of games I played as a kid, and debunking just a few of those myths that I just talked about in the beginning. So if you've been on the fence about getting your kid that Nintendo Switch they've been begging for, settle in, grab yourself a cup of coffee, and let's hang out. Hey, thanks for joining today. My name is Caitlin D'Elia, and it is my privilege to get to hang out with you. I have two kids, Finn and Junie. They are ages 5 and 7, and my husband and I are big gamer nerds and just want to share some of the joys of gaming with you. But before I get into my recommendations for games, I wanted to share a little bit of my origin story and how I became a gamer because I think that contributes to some of it. My maiden name is actually Caitlin Siebert, and my dad is Mark Siebert, which may not sound like a familiar name to you, but if you grew up playing games in the 90s and early 2000s, it would probably be a name you recognize. My dad made games like Phantasmagoria, Leisure Suit Larry, and he worked on many of the King's Quest games. So growing up, I have fond memories of sitting on my dad's lap and moving the mouse around while he was playing a game, or learning how to turn on a computer, learning how to use DOS, all of those kind of things I learned from a young age. And as I got older, my dad encouraged both my sister and I not just to play games with him, but to learn and play games on our own. I also vividly remember the days where, now we have phones in our pocket that we can just look up how to get through a puzzle or how to beat a boss. And before then, we had our family computer in the living room, PlayStation in the basement, and I'd be playing a game and I'd get stuck and I'd have to go upstairs and go on to Engine is Jurassic World, Jurassic Park. I'd go on to the IGN website, look up a walkthrough for the game I was playing, try to remember all the details, then run back downstairs and try and solve the puzzle. Or I'd be stuck on a boss battle in a particular game for weeks and weeks and weeks, and there was no Reddit to check to learn how to solve this puzzle or beat this boss. Those were the days. And so my first point is that playing video games teaches perseverance. This is very similar to playing a sport or learning an instrument in the fact that you have to have some productive struggle. You have to grind in this day and age, even more so than when we millennials were kids. There's a culture of instant gratification now where they can just look something up on ChatGPT, or they can check the internet for answers, and there's a whole thing just laid out there for them. There's something really valuable of having to work at something, which I think some of our kids are missing these days. We've paved the streets before them to make stuff easy. So when they're playing a video game, they actually have to work hard. And there are some games that take 60 hours to play the whole story, whereas it's not something that they're going to instantly be able to do. I saw this with my son, Finn. He's been watching me play Hogwarts Legacy, and that game is not totally appropriate for his age, and so he only gets to see me play portions of the game, of course, but I do all of the fighting and storyline kind of stuff, and there are times where I let him wander around the castle. He's a big Harry Potter fan right now, so I let him find treasures and stuff like that. There was one day where we were playing, and I let him have the controller, and he was walking around Hogwarts, and there's this part in the dungeons with these frog statues that will teleport you. So the frog will swallow you and it'll teleport you to another spot. And he was casting the Revelio spell, and he could see that there was a treasure box hidden in one of those rooms, and he kept trying to jump through the frog teleportation statues to get to the treasure chest, and he couldn't figure out, and he was getting frustrated. And I remember I was doing the dishes, taking a break from playing while he was playing for a little while. And he came to me and he's like, "Mom, can you please just do it for me?" And I was like, "No, bud, you gotta figure it out yourself. Do you have to write something down? Do you need to like make a note of which one goes where?" And so like seeing him struggle and then actually succeed, seeing him be able to actually succeed and find the treasure chest, he was so much more proud of himself. He was so much more excited by getting to solve the puzzle than if I had just done it for him. That's just one example, but I actually remember for me as a 10 or 11-year-old, one of the first games that I beat on my own was the first Kingdom Hearts game. And I remember so vividly the celebration that my sister and I had when I finally beat Ansem for the first time. You fight him like 6 times or something crazy like that. But I remember just the excitement, the shared celebration we had when I finally beat Ansem, and how proud I was of myself that I persevered and I made it. And that was a hard game for a 10 or 11-year-old. I remember about halfway through the game, I called my sister downstairs one time and I was like, "Kirsten, I am just struggling so hard." And she told me, she's like, "You're still using the kingdom key? What are you doing?" And if you know the game, you know that you shouldn't be using the first keyblade for the whole game. And that's what I was trying to do. And I wasn't going to get very far if I didn't do something different. But all that to say, perseverance was such a huge part of playing video games. It really taught me to struggle and try something again, and to train and to do boring battles over and over again till I gained another level. It really taught me to keep trying. The second thing with gaming, and I really see this with my younger son, is that it helps with literacy. My 7-year-old Finn is still learning how to read and has been struggling a little bit. There's not a huge interest there in reading. So we've been trying to find different ways to encourage him to read. And I've seen it this summer. He just started playing Pokemon Sword and Shield. And if you're familiar with the game, it has no voiceovers. The deal we had with the game was that he could put it on the TV and play so long as he read the dialogue out loud. And just in the few weeks of him playing, I've seen his literacy improve. He's becoming more fluent. He's able to sound out words that he couldn't before. There are words that he used to have to sound out and now he just knows and can say. And so I think for kids that are struggling with reading, video games can be a motivational tool for them. I even remember this for myself as a kid. One of the games my sister and I really enjoyed playing was Dark Cloud. And it was a game for, I'm pretty sure it's PlayStation 2. And very similar, it had dialogue, but no spoken voiceover. And so I had to be able to read all of the portions in order to understand what was happening with the story or what to do next, what tools to use. And as a kid who struggled to read and struggled to enjoy reading, this was a game changer for me because it motivated me. I really wanted to be able to read and know what was going on. But as a kid, I really struggled. There's several people with dyslexia in my family, and I've never been diagnosed, but I do have trouble with reading written text. Words sometimes get jumbled, and so I'm an auditory processor. But as a kid, being able to read text on a screen and be drawn into a story really was a game changer. I think it paved the way for me to books like Harry Potter. When I was in 3rd grade, I read Harry Potter for the first time, and it was one of the books that really changed my reading perspective. When I used to read out of obligation, now I was reading for enjoyment. And I think gaming really showed me that I could be brought into a fantasy world through text. So if you have a kid who's struggling to read or is still stumbling over words, this could be a tool for you to allow them to practice out loud reading text and growing in literacy. We've talked about perseverance, we've talked about reading literacy, but I think one of the other big, huge benefits of video games is teaching problem-solving skills. I used to be a math teacher, and I had a lot of students who would say, "Ms. B, I'm so bad at math. Why do I have to learn this? I'm never going to use this in my real life. And for the most part, they're partially true. I mean, algebra, yes, but as you get into the higher level maths, there's a lot that you don't necessarily use in your everyday life. And we have phones now that can do a lot of mathematical processing for us. But what I would tell them is that learning math is like strength training. So think about a football player. I am not a sportsy person, so bear with me in this analogy, but you think about a football player, they go to the gym, right? And in the gym, they're going to be doing bench presses. Now, there's not many football players that get out on the field and lay down on their back and start doing this motion, right? But why do they do that? Why do they go to the gym and bench press? Because they're training their muscles, right? And so in math, it's the same thing. We're training our problem-solving muscles so that we can use them later in our life. And I think it's the same with playing video games. You're going to encounter puzzles, and you're going to encounter equations and different things that you're going to have to solve and going to have to figure out. Maybe there's a storyline that has something interesting that you don't know the answer to, and you're going to have to figure out what you can do to solve the problem. I saw this with my kids just this past weekend. I grew up playing the Humongous games, Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam, Fatty Bear, Putt Putt, all of those really fun games. They're short, little point and click games. And so on Steam, they're available for pretty cheap. So I bought the kids Putt Putt Saves the Zoo for $7. And they had a blast. But what I noticed is that even my 5-year-old Junie, she was able to play this game successfully. And I sat with them, both Finn and Junie, and listened to them. There's different parts of the game where you have to find a toolbox so that you can get the right tool that has the right wrench to open a gate to let water through. Or there's a part in the game where there's a raft and it's missing a log, and so you can't ride the raft until you find the log that's missing. And just listening to both of them try and problem solve. Sometimes they weren't even right. You know what I mean? Like, I would say, what are we going to do about that? And they would look at what we had in our inventory and they're like, well, maybe we can use the rope, because then if we tied the raft together, then it would hold us up. But it was still missing the log. And so I'd be like, well, then what should we do? And sometimes they'd be like, well, maybe we just don't have what we need for that right now, and we need to go and look for a log somewhere else. And so just seeing their mind work, seeing them think through different scenarios and try different things, I think that's a really valuable tool. Even just the thought of, I don't have the information, let me go see who I can talk to that might have the information. That is, again, such a valuable skill to have in your tool belt, just as a human being, to think, I can't solve this problem, let me go to someone for help, or let me look around and see what I have right here to see if I can solve this. And seeing my 5-year-old be able to do that, I think there's just something really special and really valuable about that. The last thing about games is that they can be a really fun collaborative activity. There's a lot of people that used to say that video games made you antisocial and isolated you, and I think that's just really not the case anymore. There's so many collaborative games that you can play together or play online or sit and play as a family. And in the same vein, I think you need to use some caution there, right? So online gaming can be really dangerous too for young kids, and so I think it's important to be clear about who your kids are friends with on those online platforms. My kids don't play any online games because I just don't think they're old enough. But if your kids do play online games, I think it's really important that you are aware of who their friends are, how late they're playing, what those chat conversations are looking like or sounding like. Just be aware of those things. But online gaming aside, there's so many fun things that we do as a family to play games together. It can look like all of us with a controller in our hands playing Mario Kart. It can look like us playing Pokemon Snap and passing the controller around for each map and each person getting a turn to take pictures. It can also look like us sitting down and watching Finn play Pokemon Sword and Shield, or watching me play Hogwarts Legacy, or whatever it may be. We do games as a family. We do it together. And even as adults, Tim and I make a habit of playing games together. Sometimes our nights look like him sitting in one recliner playing on the Switch and I'm playing a game on the PlayStation. Or it can look like both of us sitting on the couch together playing Baldur's Gate. Now, our kids don't watch us play Baldur's Gate. Be aware of what your kids are watching and playing and doing all of that. Make sure it's age appropriate, right? And even when I was a kid, gaming was always a family affair. I have memories of our family playing Diablo together. Granted, I probably was playing that game a little too young than I should have been, but we would all get on our respective computers and we'd start a campaign together and we'd go run around and play Diablo 2. It was loads of fun and some of my favorite memories. We even had family in California that would join us online and we'd all play together. And there's just something really special about that. Gaming can really bring people together. It's a community thing. It's fun to do a story together, to fight a bad guy together, to lose together and to win together. It's all part of it. Now, my kids aren't playing Diablo 3 or 4 with us. That's something that we do on our own. But I think that there's something really special about predicting what's going to happen in a storyline, cheering each other on, learning to be a gracious winner, and learning how to not be a sore loser. All of those things are so important. Games can even be educational. Little bonus content here. I play a game called Wingspan, and it actually started as a board game. There's also Fishspan, but Wingspan is on the Switch, and it's about birds, right? And you have to have different bird cards, and they lay eggs and eat food and different things like that. But each card tells you a bird fact, and my son is obsessed with birds. I think that's just a 7-year-old boy thing, but he gets so excited to watch me play because he gets to hear the different bird facts, and then to be able to share them with his friends is just such a big thing to him. So I want to conclude with some of those myths that we started with, that gaming will rot your brain. I think it actually encourages and promotes cognitive function, and there's lots of research about that. Your kid is going to be addicted to a screen. I think that's if you let them. That's more of a parenting issue than the screen issue. It's how much are you letting them play games and what kind of games you're letting them play. Are they playing things that challenge them and develop cognitive function, or are they playing things that are melting their brain cells? And then the thing about violent video games. Correlation is not causation. I think there's just some messed up people in the world, and there are some people who have tried to make claims that violent video games have caused people to be violent later on in life, and I just don't think that's necessarily true. There are so many amazing benefits to playing games. You get to live in a world outside of yourselves, and I think it really helps take the egotistical mindset that's in so many of our kids these days and help them to think about someone other than themselves. Help them to be empathetic and care for characters beyond themselves. Help them to cheer on and be excited about things. Playing video games gives our kids the opportunity to use their imagination and to think creatively and to dream. I'm really grateful that I grew up in a family that played games. I think it helped me a lot as a kid to persevere and to try hard and to problem solve. I'm really glad that I still get to play games and have fun with my husband and with my kids. I think as I got older, also, playing games really challenged my point of view and my perspectives on things. I still play games that I don't agree with every single theme inside of the game. Some games have really challenged me, and helped me to sort of see the world in a different way. One of my favorite game series of all time is The Last of Us. And no, your kids should not play The Last of Us. But especially the second game. I remember finishing it and sitting with Tim and just being like, these concepts of hatred and love and revenge are so deep and so rooted in our culture. And I just really had to sit and chew on the different thoughts and the different perspectives that were coming out of that game and really question, what would I do in those situations and why would someone respond in a particular way? And I remember that The Last of Us 2 specifically because so many people were upset with the game, and I think it's because they just didn't really understand the heart of the game. And so I like to play games that make me question and make me think and make me really ponder. I also like to just play mind-numbing games where I'm just trying to play birds. So I want to wrap this up with just a few final thoughts. Why should you let your kids play games? Perseverance, problem solving, literacy, creativity, collaboration, all incredible positive things about playing video games. I think this goes without saying, be aware of what your kids are playing, be wise about their presence on the internet, but let them go and experience a world beyond themselves. You are not going to regret it. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Hope you enjoyed your cup of coffee. Mine is now cold, and we'll see you in the next video.